Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reactions to qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. If you missed it, it came out this morning, all our reactions to the sprint race, but that is in the past. It's now all about qualifying. Before we get into any of this, remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to the members, Dakota, the Joyous James, Ryan Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, Michael Johnston, and the returning to the membership, F. Here we go, though. Let's talk about qualifying. And you know what? All the way through this race weekend, my main thing has been what a difference a week can make. That's even what I put in the thumbnail of the sprint race. But this qualifying, is very much what a difference a few hours can make, especially when we get through to Q3. Of course, we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's start with Q1, where very early on, Jack Doohan has a spin. He is able to recover from that, though, and keep on going in the session. Lando Norris has his first lap time due to track limits. Liam Lawson was noted for failing to slow under the yellow flags, but there was no further action from that. Wouldn't want Lawson to take a grid place penalty. No. Then we see something that a big story throughout all of qualifying today is that the Racing Bulls are very good. Hajar finished Q1 in second place, whilst Yuki Tsunoda took third place. The same could not be said for Liam Lawson, who for the second time this weekend qualified dead last in 20th place. Of the 3 qualifyings that Liam Lawson has done thus far in his Red Bull career, he has been out in Q1 in all 3 of them and dead last in 2 of them. It is not going well for Liam Lawson in qualifying. What we can say for him from the sprint race is he did a much better job in the sprint race in terms of recovering than he did in the race in Australia. I know he did crash in that race, but even before he crashed, he was still relatively nowhere. He did go from 20th to 14th in the sprint race. Still not a great recovery drive, but it was a sprint. Maybe over the course of a longer race tomorrow, we can see him do a bit better recovery there. 19th place, Gabriel Bortoleto. I think this is the worst qualifying for him so far, in 19th place. Jack Doohan is 18th. Ollie Behrman is 17th. And Pierre Gasly in 16th. The first Alpine double Q1 elimination since the Hungarian Grand Prix. And it is interesting to think about. Alpine, who seem to have pace in testing, seem to have some okay pace in Australia, they are one of the 2 teams who have admitted that they have changed their wing setup, their rear wing setup, due to this new restrictions on the gap in the rear wing. So, is it connected? Is Ali just having a bad race weekend? Who's to know? But it's something to worth keep in your mind whilst you're watching the Alpines this weekend. We do see Ollie Behrman definitely impeded Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll coming out of turn 13 onto that long back straight was definitely impeded by Ollie Behrman. No 2 ways around it. So Ollie Behrman could be hit with I think it's a 3-place grid penalty, which would take him to the back of the grid here. So that's one to keep an eye out for tomorrow's race. Max Verstappen, interestingly, the only driver not to do a second fast lap, saving a set of tyres for himself there for later on into qualifying. Going into Q2 now, and it was a very close session in terms of the bottom 10, upper 11th, 12th area. There's not a word for that area, but it was very close there. In 15th, Carlos Sainz. Disappointing for him again, having an awful weekend. I mean, in Australia, he was out-qualified by Albon, I believe, unless I'm misremembering that. Did crash early on. Disappointing for him there, but showed some pace before that. Here, really just has not gone well for him at all. Bad qualifying in the sprint yesterday. The tyres got destroyed. The only man to do a pit stop in the sprint race kind of got semi-rectified by getting those 3 positions at the end due to the crash between Doohan and Bortoleto. But here again, into Q2, really not that good in 15th place whilst his teammate goes through to Q3. Lance Stroll in 14th place with Fernando Alonso in 13th. You know what? You got to say for Stroll, early days still this season, but doing pretty well. Of course, that good points result last week in Australia. Beat Alonso in qualifying for the sprint, held Lando Norris behind him for all of the sprint until the penultimate lap, and here we go, he's basically on the pace of Alonso again in Q2. So far, so good for Lance Stroll. Maybe he doesn't need to leave Formula 1 after all. In 12th place was Nico Hülkenberg, in 11th was Esteban Ocon, but very, very close for them. Ocon missing out on Q3 by 0.03 of a second. Hülkenberg missing out by 0.04. So like I said, very tight there between who made it through and who didn't. Two great laps from Ocon and Hülkenberg. So, Hülkenberg, he's been beaten by Bortoleto in Australia and in the sprint, but this is the Hülkenberg of old when it comes to amazing qualifying laps, because he very, very nearly got that Sauber into Q3 here, just missing out by 0.04, so a great lap from those two, nothing to be disappointed for them, just missing out on Q3. And as we go into Q3 now, here is how we were after everyone set their first fast laps. Now, Kimi Antonelli had a track limits violation on the final corner, getting up on the curb, going into the gravel trap, so he has his lap time was taken away, so he was in 10th. Alex Albon was 9th, Yuki Tsunoda was 8th, and Isaac Hadjar was 7th, but the interesting thing for those bottom three was they were all on used tyres. So Hadjar, Yuki and Albon, their first laps all on used tyres, so not truly representative of where they are from there. Charles Leclerc down in 6th. Leclerc has not been anywhere near his teammates so far this weekend. Of course, Lewis Hamilton getting the pole position, winning the sprint race. Leclerc very much off the pace of his Ferrari teammate thus far. George Russell was in 5th, Lewis Hamilton 4th, Max Verstappen 3rd, Lando Norris was in 2nd by 0.090, and then Oscar Piastri had provisional pole position after the first lap. Then everyone set fast lap times again, and we have Alex Albon in 10th, Yuki Tsunoda in 9th, Antonelli, his lap time sticks, he's in 8th, Isaac Hadjar in his second ever F1 race weekend, coming back from crashing on the formation lap. He starts tomorrow in 7th place. A fantastic, fantastic lap for Isaac Hadjar. Charles Leclerc in 6th with Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Ferrari, who looked so quick throughout the sprint portion of the weekend, sprint qualifying into the sprint race, having settled for 5th and 6th, the third row of the grid. Max Verstappen is in 4th. Lando Norris in 3rd. Obviously much better than he was in sprint qualifying, but missing out on the front row because George Russell set a fantastic lap time in the dying moments of Q3 to take that front row, take second place by 0.082, very close to pole position for George Russell. George Russell, who's having a quiet but successful season. That's how I described him earlier on in the sprint race. A podium in Australia, good results in the sprint race. Here he is on the front row again. He's doing very well, George Russell. One to watch throughout this year. But the man who will start the race tomorrow from pole position for the first time ever is Oscar Piastri. He's had sprint poles before, but this is the first ever pole position for him in a feature race. A fantastic lap. And Oscar Piastri, we talk all the time of, is he on Lando's level? Does he have a higher ceiling than Lando? Can he take it to Lando? These questions are thrown about him all the time. And what I said coming into this season was, last year, there were days when he was better than Lando. There were days when he was on Lando's level. But over the course of the season, Lando was better than Oscar for the majority of it. Here, thus far this season, yes, he made that mistake in Australia, and there's no getting away from that. But before that, I thought he was matching Lando. The questions for Oscar have always been around keeping his tyres. The tyre degradation for him is normally quite a bit higher than Lando's is. But secondly, his qualifying has never been anywhere near as good as Lando's. And that was something he definitely needed to work on coming into this year. Here we are, second race of the year, his first pole position. He's done what he has to do. If, it looks like the McLaren is the faster car than the rest of the field this year. But if this race weekend has showed us anything, it's that, you can get in there, the likes of your Ferraris, Max Verstappen, George Russell, who knows if Kimi Antonelli, maybe when he gets a bit more experience, maybe he can be in that discussion as well. But if it is going to be the two McLarens going at it for the world title, this is when Oscar needs to perform, because his race pace is relatively good. His qualifying pace was what was lacking, and it seems like he's been working on that, and this is the proof here, his first pole position, and we'll see what he can do tomorrow. But a good start to the race weekend for Oscar Piastri, second in the sprint race, on pole. What's it going to be tomorrow? I think we're set up for we'll be in for quite a fun race here, because we saw the tyres just dying in the sprint. That'll be amplified in the race because they'll have the 100 kilos of fuel on board. No one's ran the hard tyre yet, so that is a bit of a question mark. It'll be who wants to go to that hard tyre first, whilst the entire rest of the pit lane watch to see how they perform. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Lawson starts on the hard so that Red Bull have some data for Max higher up in the grid. That's very much what used to happen to Checo. The two Ferraris, 5th and 6th, the third row of the grid. Big question marks around there because we know they have the pace. So how can they come through there? Max Verstappen, what can he do? We are setting up for quite the fun race tomorrow. I'll be here to discuss all of it after it's gone down. So make sure you subscribe for all of that. Also, F1 Academy is back this weekend. I haven't seen the race yet because I was asleep. But there will be coverage of F1 Academy later on this weekend as well. So all that to come, then driver ratings, then on Tuesday, Stop and Go F1 Retro Review 1981, the Argentinian Grand Prix. All of that to come. I will see you there. Until then, though, have a good one. Goodbye.